So last week we talked about the basics of the game and how to get started. Today, we're going to talk about the three main playlist activities: Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit. You will spend quite a lot of time in these modes since they will be useful to you in leveling up, getting certain weapons, and completing bounties. Let's begin with Strikes. If you already played through the tutorial, the A Guardian Rises questline, then you already have an idea what a strike is. It's just a basic mission that will have you moving through different areas, killing enemies, and then killing the boss at the end. None of the strikes are going to involve any kind of mechanic like a raid or a dungeon, with the exception of the Corrupted Strike. And for any of you guys who get loaded into the Corrupted Strike, throw the ball to a teammate. That is all you have to do. Strikes are going to be useful when initially leveling up to get gear, since strikes will drop plenty of blue gear at the end of a strike, which up to a certain point will always be higher than what you currently have. Whenever you go to do strikes, I would recommend picking up bounties from both Zavala and Gunsmith. You can complete all the bounties you get from these guys in strikes, so it'll be a good way to get a lot of XP while you level up to do strikes. There are two main types of strikes you will do: Playlist Strikes and Nightfalls. Playlist Strikes are the top node when you go to the Vanguard tab in the directory. The playlist will select a random strike from all the strikes in the game, and the difference between this and a regular strike that you can select from one of the planets is that the playlist will have modifiers that will either provide some form of damage buff or make the enemy stronger. There will always be an element modifier that will make a certain element do more damage, which resets weekly. There will always be another modifier that will always make you stronger in some way, which resets daily. The other main type of strikes are Nightfalls. These are going to be strikes with many modifiers on them that will make the enemies much stronger. These strikes will have different difficulty levels: Adept, Heroic, Legend, Master, and Grandmaster. While these strikes are more difficult than the normal versions, the higher the difficulty of the Nightfall, the better the rewards are going to be. Nightfalls can drop exotics, enhancement cores, enhancement prisms, ascendant shards, and Nightfall exclusive weapons. Once you start doing legend difficulty content, these are going to start dropping much more often, with Master giving you these rewards much more consistently. Grandmaster is available at attempts for people, like myself, who put a ridiculous amount of time into the game, but provide the best rewards for all the Nightfall difficulties. I wouldn't worry about Grandmaster for quite some time, because in addition to a lot of time, it requires a lot of good weapons that will take you a while to get. And Grandmasters are only really geared towards the 1% of the player base. So unless you want to be in that top 1% of the player base, I wouldn't worry about Grandmasters for a long time. The other main difference between Nightfalls and regular strikes are the addition of champion enemies. These enemies will be noticeably different in appearance. For example, a Hive Ogre will have these glowing tendrils coming from its head. There are three different types of champions: Barrier, Overload, and Unstoppable. They can easily be dealt with by using Anti-Barrier, Unstoppable, and Overload rounds. Barrier champions will put up a barrier that you will not be able to break unless you shoot it with anti-barrier rounds. Unstoppable enemies will not be stunned unless you shoot it with an unstoppable round. Overload enemies will have constant health regeneration that will only stop if you hit them with overload rounds. Breaking a barrier champion shield or hitting an unstoppable or overload champion with unstoppable or overload rounds will stun them, allowing you a window of time to kill them where they are harmless. The weapons that can have these kind of rounds come from your seasonal artifact, which we will talk about in the next video. Let's move on to the Crucible. The Crucible is the game's PvP mode. Arguably, the most important thing to know about Crucible is that apart from Trials of Osiris and Iron Banner, your level does not matter at all in terms of doing damage. A person at level 1100 will do just as much damage as somebody who is level 1340, though the perks you have on your gun will absolutely matter. There are two different Crucible ranking systems: Valor and Glory. Valor is also known as Quick Play, and that name Valor is going to be changing to be called Crucible ranks in Season 15. All game modes, except for the competitive mode Survival, will give you Valor ranks. Survival will give you Glory ranks. As you get ranks, you can talk to Shacks to claim rewards, in addition to getting gear every time you get a new rank. There are many different game modes that will either always be present or will be rotated in at some point. The game mode in the Crucible for Quick Play that will always be present will be Control. which is a mode that has 3 zones on the map, just like Domination in Call of Duty. Depending on how many zones your team holds, you will get that many points when you kill an enemy. If you have 0 or 1 zone, you will get 1 point per kill. 2 points for 2 zones, 3 points for 3 zones. Iron Banner is another mode that comes for about a week at a time, about 3 times per season. It will have its own weapons and armor to get, and it will function just like Control does, except that when one team captures 3 zones, all zones are locked and the enemy team cannot capture them for about 30 seconds. And your level here will matter. So the higher level you are, the more damage you're going to do, and the lower level you are, the less damage you're going to do to the enemies. Trials of Osiris is the endgame content for Crucible that comes every Friday at reset until Tuesday at reset. Talking to Saint 14 in the tower will get you started on doing trials. There are trials exclusive armor and weapons to get depending on how well you do. Each week you can pick up a trials passage, where getting 3 losses will end your card. You can reset your card at any point though to keep going, so if you get 3 losses, you're not done for the weekend. Getting 3 wins, 5 wins, and 7 wins before getting 3 losses will provide you with rewards, with getting 7 wins and no losses gets you an adept weapon, which is a weapon that will allow you to put on better versions of the mods you can put on your weapons right now. Here's the thing about Trials though, it's a crap game mode currently. Let me explain. Destiny 2 is a free-to-play game that has a PvP aspect to it. That means it has a cheater problem, just like Warzone does currently. Not only will you have to play against cheaters, but the sweatiest of people who do services to log on to people's accounts and get them flawless for them. For the average player, going flawless will be impossible, and even getting 3 wins is going to be difficult. There is some kind of saving grace though. Every week, Saint 14 will have a weekly bounty to complete trials matches and games, and completing the bounty will award you with whatever the 3-win reward is. Since the bounty is completion based, even if you lose every single match and you are the absolute worst player in the world, you can still get a reward for the week. Unless you are a seriously dedicated PvP person, I can't in good conscience recommend you do trials unless you just want to do the weekly bounty. I think that about covers the Crucible. Let's move on to Gambit. Gambit is the last of the 3 playlist activities, and for some people, this is going to be your favorite or least favorite. It's probably not going to be in between. Gambit is a 4v4 PvPvE game mode, where each team will have tons of enemies to kill. Every enemy you kill will drop motes on the ground, and depositing the motes in the bank in the center will fill up your team's bar. The goal is to get 100 motes, summon the boss, and kill the boss before the enemy team can. When you deposit motes greater than 5 at a time, you will send a blocker to the other side that will lock the bank until the blockers are killed. Depositing 5 to 9 motes will send over a taken goblin, 10 to 14 will send a taken phalanx, and 15 will send over a taken knight. When you die with motes, you will lose every mote you had on you, so try to avoid dying. Every 25 motes deposited will allow your team to invade the other team's side, where you are granted an overshield and vision of where the other players are. The goal here will be to either pick off easy targets or to kill the players who have the most amount of motes. The biggest tip I have here is to watch the enemy team's mote count. The white bar is the total amount of motes each team has on them. Each tick mark on the bar is 25 motes. So when you see that the enemy team's bar is close to the next tick mark, deposit all motes you have. I don't care if you're 1 mote away from getting 15 or 1 mote away from getting 10. Deposit all your motes right away. If you wait, you run the very real chance that an enemy teammate invades your side, kills you, and making you lose all the motes that you could have deposited. To many people, the game mode is frustrating due to the very powerful role of the invader. Often, the invader will bring a rocket launcher or xenophage, which is an exotic machine gun that functions more like an energy blast than an actual machine gun, which will pretty much instantly kill you, pissing you off a lot. Just like the Crucible and Strikes in Season 15, ranking up here will give rewards right away, and some you can claim from the Drifter. There are also weapons that can drop at the end of each match that you can only get from Gambit, just like in Strikes and Crucible. I think that about covers everything for this video. Definitely a shorter one than the first one, since there's not as much to talk about here. for these modes as the last video. See you guys later, and I was up, Guardian.